Yeah, good morning. I am Keith June, and I'm a volunteer at the National Museum of the United States Army. Well, I served in the Army for 30 years, and one of the things I learned in the Army, and one of the things I've learned in life from my community, from growing up, was giving back. And I love the Army, and I love the Army because I love the people in the Army and connected to the Army, and families and civilians. The Army is a great institution, and I saw this as a great way of giving back and being a part of something very special as well. The one that comes to mind that I just absolutely love is it's a fragment of the national colors that were carried by the 54th Massachusetts Infantry, which was a black regiment in the Civil War. And they were composed of soldiers, individuals. Some had been enslaved before the war, some had been free. But there was one soldier, in fact, he was the first Black Medal of Honor recipient, and William Carney. William Carney was enslaved in Virginia. He escaped, he freed himself, he escaped to Massachusetts, he joined the 54th, and he was involved in the attack on Battery Wagner in South Carolina. The Confederate Congress had passed a law that if black soldiers were captured, the penalty was death. So to imagine those soldiers, those individuals who previously had been enslaved and had been treated by their country as less than equal, but joining the Army, and by the end of the Civil War, over 10% of the soldiers in the Union Army were black. So pretty incredible. And to see that flag, and to think of those soldiers and think of their service and their sacrifice. So that is, again, I have so many, but I think that is the one that I find especially special. I love being a part of the museum, and every single time I go to the museum, either for training or as a volunteer or just visiting, I see something new. I see a different perspective. I think a different perspective of things. So the exhibits are just amazing. The museum staff is amazing, and not just in terms of their expertise and their experience, but just as individuals, some very, very special folks that I've been connected with. And the volunteers, they're just some amazing volunteers I have met from all walks of life. Some are retired from the military, some are family members, some are neither, but they just love the Army and they have some connection to the Army. And I've learned so much from volunteers. In fact, one of the volunteers is a Air Force Academy graduate who taught Chinese at the Air Force Academy. And I've had several discussions with him about China and Chinese policy. So the volunteers are just amazing, as well as people that I served with in the Army who are volunteers to be able to maintain that connection. One of my really favorite exhibits is there is an M1 rifle that was carried by Private Tehan. Private Tehan was in the 508th Parachute Infantry Regiment, and he parachuted into Normandy. And he was killed soon after, either landing or soon after landing, and the weapon fell into the hands of a French farmer, and then it belonged to a French colonel, and then it was given back to the Army by the French Army Chief of Staff, and it was given to General Milley when he was the Chief of Staff of the Army, and it was in his office for some time, and then it was given to the Museum of the United States Army. And you see that weapon and that M1, and Private Tehan had carved his name in the butt of the weapon, and pretty amazing. Just that story. You see that weapon and you know the story behind it. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, I have a couple. One of my favorites was where they have the art, the drawings and the paintings. And when I was volunteering, there was a woman, an artist, who had actually drawn one of the items that's on display. It was pretty amazing. She told the story, when She was at Fort Jackson in the mid 70s, I think it was, and she told the story of the drawing and the individuals. And I mean, the illustrations, the drawings are just amazing anyway. But hearing the story and hearing her level of detail, and she had just amazing, level of detail and who the individuals were and what she was trying to show, and that was powerful. That was powerful. I was honored to serve 2 tours in the 82nd Airborne Division. And every year, the 82nd does what's called All American Week. And it starts with a division run, and you get 20,000 screaming paratroopers running down Long Street Road on Fort Bragg. But when I first got there in 1991, at the end of the run, they put one of the veterans of the 82nd, and it's pretty amazing. But in 1991, the veteran was a veteran of the First World War. It was a soldier who had served in the First World War, and it still gives me chills to think about it. But you get 20,000 screaming paratroopers, and at the end of the run, there's an old soldier standing there in his doughboy uniform, standing erect, and folks were just going crazy. And I always think about that, sort of that long line, that lineage, being connected to something, seeing, I'm sure that soldier, that old soldier was in his 90s, but standing there and just knowing that you are a part of something really, really special. It's part of that tradition, part of belonging to a unit that had served in the First World War, the Second World War, and Vietnam and beyond. But seeing that soldier and how proud he was and how proud those paratroopers were to be connected to him. The Army is just an amazing organization, institution, for lots of reasons. One, and I'll say that I think sometimes as a nation, we can be very divided. But one of the things I loved about the Army was that, at the end of the 20-mile ruck march, didn't matter what you looked like, didn't matter who you were, but that you were part of that unit, and that was the thing that connected you. And the other thing is that, when you take the oath to uphold and defend, that, you gain such an understanding and appreciation of who we are as a country, and that we are connected to something really, really special. And the idea of service. I mean, just the people that I met, the veterans, the old soldiers, the people that had served their country. And when I was younger, 20 years ago, when there were lots more World War II veterans, to understand their service and their sacrifice, and just how special it was, and the idea of who we are and being connected to that, and an understanding and appreciation of this nation. Yeah, volunteering is just it's a great opportunity to learn, to connect with other people, to learn about the Army, to learn about our nation. I mean, it's the National Museum of the United States Army, but I'll tell you, I think it would be really hard to understand our nation's history without understanding the Army. And a story I love to tell, and I think it's in the National Museum of African American History and Culture, when they talk about the Army and chaplains. And for many enslaved people, it was Army chaplains that performed marriages. And I think that's an aspect of the Army's history that many may not realize, and that in so many ways, the Army as a symbol of our nation has been a symbol of freedom, and a symbol of dignity, and that the Army, for so many people around the world, the Army has performed that role, and not just the Army, because the Army is composed of people, but that the soldiers in the Army have been the ambassadors of freedom and dignity for so many people around the world. And I think that as you volunteer, you connect to that and you learn those stories. And I think the other thing that I love about being a volunteer is that so often, history is about, we think history is about the big picture, when really it's also about the picture, the story of the individual soldier, of the individuals. And, I think one of the things that we were told early on about the National Museum of the United States Army is that it's not a branch museum. It's not, about the Signal Corps or about armor or artillery. It's the story of soldiers. It's their story. And that is really, really special. And I think when you volunteer, you learn those stories. And it's those stories that make the museum, that make the Army really, really special. I don't think, and I love museums. I've been to a zillion museums. I don't pretend to be a museum expert, but I love going to museums. I love talking to people. The exhibits in the National Museum of the United States Army, you will not see anywhere else. You simply will not. I mean, even if you go to a branch museum, like at Fort Gordon or Fort Sill, but the exhibits that you see in the Army, the FT-17 tank from the First World War, the fragment of the colors carried by the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, the display about the Hello Girls. That's another great one that, again, I don't pretend to be an expert on museums, but I don't think there is a display like that on the Hello Girls anywhere in the world, quite frankly. The First World War, the gallery on Nation Overseas is really, really special. And again, I'm trying to think of any museums that and I've been out to the National World War I Museum, I've been to the World War II Museum, but the exhibits and the artifacts that you will see at the National Museum of the United States Army, you will not see anywhere else. And I think also the museum has done a great job of of looking at other perspectives, if you will. The gallery on the Army and Society is really, really special. And again, I don't think you'll see that anywhere else at any other museum. And I think the museum has done a great job of highlighting some artifacts, and so that you get a very good understanding and appreciation of the Army and the Army's role in our nation's history.